What's the worst best thing you've ever seen happen at a wedding? I walked by an outdoor wedding in which the bride walked into man-eater, and the groom walked in 2 gold digger. Either the whole family has a great sense of humor or the marriage is doomed. My ex-husband and I were at his cousin's wedding. Another cousin of his, 25 was a groomsman. He was a giant guy, 6'4", roughly 400 pounds, and the life of the party, picking kids up and throwing them in the air, holding the groom on his shoulders, dancing like a maniac, having a blast. He went to the bathroom and came back to the reception to the music cut and everyone circled around the dance floor just panicked. There was Matt, completely purplish red on the floor while a guest performed CPR and others were calling 911, taking his pulse, screaming. He passed away from a massive heart attack, pronounced dead on the scene. The reception ended right then and there. Obviously, the bride and groom were supposed to leave for their honeymoon to Hawaii that same evening. They ended up not going in. Instead, they stayed home to attend the funeral where the groom was a pallbearer. My cousin had her wedding at a zoo because she was a vet tech and her first date was at a zoo as well as her engagement, so it just made sense. I was a bridesmaid, so we got to get especially up close to the animals. The giraffes kept trying to eat the bouquets during the pictures, and they were non-toxic, so it was mostly just funny and cute. My buddy married a woman who was estranged from most of her family save her 90-plus-year-old grandpa. They were so close and he was in poor health that the wedding was held in Grandpa's backyard so he could be there. 36 hours before the wedding he had a massive heart attack and was rushed to the ER. They were recommending hospice, palliative care, and bride-to-be was going to call off the wedding. Grandpa insisted it go on even with him not being at his own house because people were flying from all over the country, all during intermittent bouts of consciousness. Fast forward to the wedding and this determined granddad broke out of the hospital, just unhooked all his equipment, IV stuff, and took a cab to his own house hours before the wedding. The family that was invited was incredibly upset but knew how close he was to the bride and he ended up staying through the whole ceremony without issue, slept in his bed and then returned to the hospital the next day. Think he also drank a few beers. Absolute legend of a man. They rented a huge manor. Music? Not a problem. Spotify. Premium, you ask? Nope. With the commercials. Watching the groom and his best men ride the bathtub that was used for the beer down a hill and not die. It was a hill for loading boats into a river. It was like a 150-foot ride and they got going scary fast. The bath broke into pieces but all 5 of the men were fine, somehow. When my uncle got married, the best man dropped the ring. In the dead silence of the church you could hear it ting 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 as it bounced along the floor, followed by one of the groomsmen stage whispering, "Jesus Christ," loud enough for everyone to hear. The pastor didn't even bat an eye, just said, "The ring has already been blessed. Thank you," and carried on. My best friend's biological father, who took off when she was very young, threw a fit and made everyone from his family leave, because my best friend did her father-daughter dance with her stepdad, who has raised her in her father's absence. The minister was doing their speech during the ceremony and asked, rhetorically, "What is love? Baby, don't hurt me," was muttered by several groomsmen, who all started cracking up. Roller skate wedding. Bride fell down and opened a gusher on her head. They finished the ceremony and took her to the hospital. She ended up needing emergency surgery to drain fluid buildup in her head and ended up having to relearn how to walk. The adverse effects were from the surgery that saved her life, not the accident itself. Sometimes to save someone, you gotta fluff some garbage up. I guess let their children play in the kitchen a couple hours before the wedding despite repeatedly being told not to let their children in there. Among other things, apparently they'd been misbehaving a lot. The kids destroyed the wedding cake. I believe they were related to the bride somehow and that's why they were there so early. There was a couple who had been best friends forever, like many years. They never put the boyfriend-girlfriend label on anything, but they were both in the military, lived together, and were an item long before they introduced each other as girlfriend and boyfriend. By the time they started dating, they only really dated for about a year before they got married. Even though they'd effectively been together for over a decade, their families knew each other. Everyone who knew them knew they were going to eventually get married. It wasn't weird if you knew. During their wedding, they were brought to the dance floor to play some kind of newlywed game while the DJ, who didn't know them, macked the event. He asked how long they dated, to which they said just under a year. The DJ goes on this rant about how he can't believe people that only know each other for a short period of time and get married. He unironically asked them if they understood that they were getting married, and that he seriously doubted that they'd known each other for long enough to make that kind of commitment. Yikes. At my wedding, the maid of honor gave a 15-minute speech that did nothing but reference her breakup, and then me and my wife's prior relationships in gruesome detail. Longest 15 minutes of my life. We're no longer married. Best. Bride and groom both happy, crying at the altar. Worst. Another man proposing to his girlfriend during the reception. Never seen but heard about. Someone else proposing to the bride during the ceremony. Worst. The very drunk groom screaming in the face of the wedding planner. Me. Because the bar ran out of Grey Goose. We wouldn't have been able to keep serving him anyway, or when a different bride's uncle showed up to deliver the wedding cake and he didn't secure it in his car, so the whole thing toppled over. At my wedding, the registrar said the best man's name instead of mine during the I do's, and my wife was too busy staring at me to notice. My mate with pure class started to stand up and walk up to take my place. I gave him the evil monkey stare and the whole room was laughing pretty hard. The registrar's face was bright red and she apologized for it. Lol. Gay male wedding in England. Registrar stands in front of the ceremony before starting the vows and for some inexplicable reason says, "Get your rings ready, boys." Cue 30 gays bursting out in uncontrollable laughter, and the older family members at the front looking round confused and/or disapprovingly. I was at a wedding where the family had a tradition that between the wedding and the reception, the couple would take a 15-minute break to share a large bowl of chicken soup. They ate at a table in the middle of the courtyard and no one was allowed to come near. Not only does it prevent the starving bride problem, but it emphasizes that they are accountable only to each other. At my cousin's wedding, one of his college friends got really drunk. There was this part during the after-party where it was just the bride and groom dancing while everyone else stood around in a circle. But he kept pushing in and dancing with the monsieur. After about 30 seconds, the best man, another one of my cousin's college friends, finds the perfect opportunity to tackle the guy out of the circle without hitting my cousin or his wife. People throwing cupcakes at each other because the bride and groom had smashed a cupcake into each other's face. This is pretty tame compared to some of y'all's experiences. But here it goes. My parents never got a real wedding due to them both being in the military and my mom being deployed to Desert Storm fairly last minute. They did a Justice of the Peace ceremony before she left for Saudi. For their 20th anniversary, they decided to have a small vow renewal ceremony on their favorite beach near where they first met, with a couple family members and close friends. And some amazing shenanigans went down. 1. While my mom was getting ready, the setting of her wedding ring came clean off, and we searched the hotel room for an hour to find the stone. We half-jokingly, half-superstitiously wondered if my dad was going to meet a horrible end that day. Point 2. I was my mom's bridesmaid, but the day before the ceremony, I crashed my bicycle and got hella whiplash. I couldn't move my neck at all, and kept it tilted in the most awkward position for the next day. We sent my dad out to get some aspirin, and he accidentally gets the stuff laced with NyQuil. We didn't realize this until too late. I spent the first half of the ceremony wobbling and trying not to pass out, and it shows in some of the photos. Point 3. During the entire ceremony, some drunk idiot we've never seen before set up camp on the rocks right next to where we were. He was super off-key, yelling, singing all the lyrics to "Let's Get It On." The chaplain himself couldn't keep his straight face. 4. My cousin was in charge of videotaping the ceremony on my mom's cheap digital camcorder, and she did a pretty good job for a 13-year-old kid. However, on our way to the reception, a guy pulls up next to our car on his bike completely butt naked, and my cousin couldn't resist snagging a shot of that. Turns out, she recorded over some of my dad's. Would have been beautiful vows. My mom now has a 10-second clip of a naked cyclist as part of her wedding video. This was probably my favorite story when we were reminiscing at their 30th anniversary last year. Edit. Grammar.